Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Happy Wednesday to you guys. Right before Thanksgiving, we get college football playoff rankings. We'll react to them on the show today as the committee, of course, once again, digging themselves a little bit of a hole here with regards to our friends down in Coral Gables, the Miami Hurricanes. But the good news for the ACC is the silly narrative that has been being circulated across the media over the last, let's say, 2-3 weeks here with the chaotic ACC championship race can be put to bed if SMU, if Virginia, or even if just SMU and Pitt to take care of business while maybe Virginia Tech doesn't take care of business, or excuse me, Virginia doesn't take care of business. The tiebreakers, we'll break them down on the show for you guys today, right from the ACC. So all the clarity in the world coming into the picture here. But the important thing is that the committee at least answered the question for everybody before you get into those really final couple of rankings reveals heading into conference championship game weekend, that this is going to be a league that gets its champion in all likelihood, barring something super crazy, because you do have Virginia, SMU, and Pitt all there ahead of Tulane, the top-ranked group of 5 team. They don't have James Madison in the poll. We'll get into it here in just a moment, but I do want to remind you guys that our show is presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions presents our Wednesday show, taking care of business owners across Dallas and North Texas, into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and in 2026 beyond. They're expanding. So this is a perfect time to give them a call at 214-444-2305 and chat with them about where they're doing their services in 2026 and beyond, doing that expansion that they're planning, seeing what they can do for your business. You can email them at info@opwsolutions.com. They are a full service maintenance company for businesses, commercial landscaping, power washing, snow and ice control, even putting up Christmas lights, repainting your parking lots, and taking care of that pesky fence really that needs some maintenance, needs some repairs. So make sure you give them a call today for all your commercial business needs over there at OPW Solutions. So they present our Wednesday show. Really appreciative of them. Thankful for all of our sponsors, but all of them, do such a great job for us and allowing us to do this show, bring it to you live, bring it to you every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time. I'm Billy Embody. Please subscribe. I always do this. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button right down here, whether you're watching on YouTube or catching us on Twitter or wherever you're finding us. Please go to our YouTube channel. All Access AM YouTube is what you can type in on Google. It'll pop right up. You click that subscribe button. It helps the show in such a big way. College football playoff rankings are out. We'll break them down. We'll share what it means for the ACC. We'll go through some of the opportunities that this league might have to get a second team in, which would be critical, but also a possibility that has a long way to go and needs a lot of things to happen. And then we can get into ACC championship tiebreakers, and we'll give out a couple of early picks, including seeing how Georgia Tech is going to fare this Friday in Atlanta in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We'll get to that in just a bit on this. College football playoff rankings, I think, are in a state of pretty calm and straightforward manner right now, unless you're talking about the Notre Dame-Miami debate. Like, just watching kind of reaction around the college football playoff world, that is what these rankings are centered around. It's not about Alabama. It's not about BYU being in the middle there. It's not about Utah. It is Notre Dame, Miami, and how this committee continues to have the separation between the two, but also have that inability to acknowledge the reality that Miami beat Notre Dame on the field earlier this year and why it isn't being added into the the formula more. And it is just wild to me to see the committee continue to go from Mac Rhodes to Hunter Yurachek now as the committee chair and see it be mishandled so poorly, not only from a true why they have Notre Dame where they have, why they have Miami where they have, but explaining it. It's just wild to see such a basic argument be just unable to be communicated to the general public. And it just shows that I think one day we're going to see this go away from the committee. There's going to be a move back to computers or some other move to select the at-large teams. There's going to become a way where the champions of the Power Four get in. They might not be seeded 1 through 4, but they're going to get in. The teams that play for these championships are probably going to get in. But how do we determine some of these other teams that are involved? That is where the committee is failing right now. And it's really, really struggling to explain it this year with Notre Dame and Miami right there. So let's get into the rankings, and we'll share them with you here if you're watching on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate you guys for doing that. They are out, and there they are. The college football playoff rankings, number 1, Ohio State sitting there at the top, followed by Indiana. You do have no debate in terms of this top 4 from most everybody. Texas A&M at 3, Georgia at number 4, Texas Tech at number 5. If they win the Big 12, watch them as a team that could move into that 4 spot potentially. If Texas A&M and Georgia play for the SEC championship, that number 5 spot could very well be the loser of the SEC championship game if you really think about it. Oregon at number 6, Ole Miss at number 7, Oklahoma at 8, Notre Dame at number 9, Alabama at number 10, BYU at 11. Here it is, Miami, number 12. The Hurricanes do face Pitt this weekend. We'll talk about that game in just a moment and its implications around the college football playoff. Utah at 13, Vanderbilt at 14, Michigan at 15, Texas at 16, USC at 17, Virginia at 18. There's the first runner-up, so to speak, in the ACC rankings. It is also one of the teams that controls its own destiny to get to Charlotte this weekend. Tennessee at 19, 20, Arizona State, 21, SMU makes its debut in the rankings after beating the brakes off of Louisville this weekend. They also control their own destiny. Pitt at number 22, Georgia Tech at 23, and here it is, Tulane at number 24, Arizona at number 25. I think you look at these rankings right off the bat, and for the most part, you've got to consider Virginia and SMU as winning out and being in the college football playoff. That is the biggest thing that we learned from this week's rankings for those of you who were wondering if the ACC champion was going to get into the college football playoff. Now, here's the other piece. Not only did the committee say the ACC champion is going to get into the college football playoff, the committee said all of the teams that can control their own destiny in terms of actually winning the ACC championship are going to get in. If Pitt beats Miami this weekend and finds themselves playing in the ACC championship, they're going to get into the college football playoff if they win that ACC championship, that is. If Georgia Tech gets into the ACC championship game somehow and they are able to beat and win the ACC championship, they'll get into the college football playoff. Miami, kind of same story. All of these things that we've all really been watching closely as the national media has talked about them are now put to rest. You can sleep soundly at night knowing that the ACC is going to get its champion in. Here are the scenarios. Let's start from the easiest to some of the more complicated. SMU and Virginia get in this weekend with wins. That would be the championship matchup. Done. That is the easiest, cleanest way for the ACC, and it allows its 2 highest ranked teams not named Miami to make it into the ACC championship. Pittsburgh would be the other team in the ACC championship if UVA loses this weekend or if SMU loses this weekend. Those are the only two ways that Pitt can get in. It's obvious, it's easy, and that's the name of the game for Pitt is beat Miami and then hope that Virginia Tech, who's won a bunch of the games in that series with Virginia over the last 25 years, all but two, can get a win over the Who's. Man, that would be a really interesting matchup. Two great quarterbacks. I know Chandler Morris is playing well, but Mason Heinschel, Kevin Jennings playing really, really well right now. Let's look at some of the more complicated dynamics for two other teams that are still in the race. Duke plays Wake Forest this weekend. They get in with a win. And there, look, guys, I'm trying to keep this simple. There are other avenues for some of these teams to make it in, but some of the most simple ways like the most simple way for team X to get in is what I'm going to share with you. The full tiebreaker rundown is on the ACC.com. So that's the website, theacc.com. And you go there to the football page and they've got the tiebreakers up there. Duke would get in, which would be the one team that you would say, okay, maybe the ACC isn't getting its champion in if Duke found its way into the ACC championship game. But here's the thing. The committee doesn't rank 25 through 30, 30 to 35. We don't know where Duke is. I can't imagine they're a top 40 team right now. Maybe they are. Maybe. But the way they're playing against non-conference, they don't have one good win on the year. It really is an average football team. If Duke were to get in, that is the chaotic world that we could live in with the college football playoff. Duke would get a spot in the championship game with a Pitt loss to Miami and a SMU loss. So really, really interesting scenario there for Duke going into this regular season finale. That is, again, just a way for them to get in. The other way is you can win and then a Pitt loss, SMU loss, and a UVA loss. That would get them in. So not unrealistic to see them, seeing some of those scenarios play out if SMU doesn't show up at Cal, if Pitt obviously gets beat by the higher ranked team in Miami, if Virginia Tech beats Virginia, Duke can still find their way in. But I don't think any ACC fan really wants to see Duke in there because of where they don't appear in the college football playoff rankings. It would be a really, really difficult spot to be in for the conference, I would say. And this is where I think having the BCS for the at-large spots would be kind of the easiest thing. It would take the human element out of it. I think Hayden Howerton has a great point there. And then you have the 5 conference champions, and then you can have a committee seed them, I would say. That would be the way to do it. You have no guesswork with that, group, of course, being that the field is already determined, and then the committee could seed them. And that would be the interesting thing for me to add into Hayden's comment in the chat. We appreciate Hayden for jumping in there with that. Georgia Tech and Miami, two teams that aren't really being talked about in the ACC championship race, of course, because Georgia Tech fumbled its own bag last week against Pitt at home on senior night. And then Miami, of course, well, they have the 2 losses to Louisville and SMU in conference play. Georgia Tech, though, if Pitt beats Miami, if UVA loses to Virginia Tech and SMU loses, Georgia Tech can still get in. Not a difficult path, not a bad path for Georgia Tech to get into this ACC championship race and play for an ACC championship. And not too crazy to see Pitt playing the way they are. Maybe knock off Miami. They're at home. It's going to be cold up there. UVA, again, we've talked about that. Their matchups against Virginia Tech have not gone well recently. And then SMU. Think SMU's playing really good football, but maybe there's a heroic day for Nick Rolovich and the Cal Bears, which would be a nightmare scenario for SMU. I know plenty of their fans and media are preparing for a trip to Charlotte next weekend with just a win over the Cal Bears this weekend, who have already clinched bowl eligibility. Miami, here's Miami's path. Got to beat Pitt, got to go up there in the cold, take care of business, and then Virginia needs to lose to Virginia Tech. Duke needs to lose to Wake Forest, not out of the crazy possibilities we've seen. Wake Forest, look at the way they're playing, and then an SMU win. Kind of doomsday scenario, I think, if you're an SMU fan, although Pitt's really hot, you don't want to necessarily see Miami again. We know all the penalty talk from Miami fans. It can go both ways, guys. There's block on the backs on Malachi Stoney's punt return that got Miami into field goal range right before the half. I mean, there was, the face mask on one of SMU's drives. I mean, there's just all sorts of things. SMU is being held repeatedly by Miami. I will say that pass rush was able to get after Carson Beck and really have that offensive line jump in and kind of getting into poor situations for Miami. But you don't want to tempt fate against a team that I think is a top 10 team again in the Miami Hurricanes. So that is Miami's path. That is the group that is in play for the ACC championship. Duke, Georgia Tech, Miami, Pitt, SMU, and Virginia. No particular order there for that game, set for 8 p.m. Eastern time on ABC on December 6th. Of course, right there in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium. And going to be a chilly night there in Charlotte. But this ACC championship race this weekend is really going to heat up. We're not going to see too much of the some of that big time, I think, games being played like we're seeing in some conferences where Texas A&M is having huge implications. Of course, Alabama Auburn, a rivalry game, is going to have that implication in the SEC. But Ohio State Michigan could really impact the Big Ten not race. I think Ohio State. I think they're clinched in the Big Ten championship. I could be wrong there. Admittedly, it's been Ohio State and Indiana the entire time, but maybe that changes if Michigan can find a way to beat Ohio State again. That would be something. But this ACC race, you've got the ranked matchup between Pitt and Miami this weekend that is going to be really interesting. I have not decided what I'm going to do on that game yet. We're going to pick the full Saturday slate on the Thursday show on Thanksgiving. We're going to pre-record that so you guys have it, and it'll go live that morning on Thanksgiving. So if you're getting up, if you're hanging out and doing some things with family, you can have your time, and we'll give you something to listen to and all that. We'll upload the podcast so it's up early in the morning as well. And who knows, maybe we even just make it as a premiere or whatever, and we can jump in the chat with you guys as we're all waking up. Again, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 Eastern is when we're live, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday on All Access AM. The only Friday game is Georgia Tech. That's a ranked matchup, of course, for the ACC taking on the SEC. The only other ranked matchup in league play is Miami at Pitt, 11 a.m., bright and early on Saturday. Huge game there on ABC at Pitt. So we'll pick that game on the Thursday show. A full slate of games, a lot of games against the SEC, an opportunity for the ACC to kind of make a statement here on this final weekend when the SEC teams on the other side of a lot of these matchups are down. You look at Louisville taking on Kentucky at home. You look at Clemson going right up the road to Columbia to face South Carolina. They're down. Florida State going on the road to Florida. They're down. You have these opportunities, and you really need the ACC. There's really not a world that is crazy to live in that you see the ACC sweep the SEC this weekend. But the doomsday scenario that is very much in play because of how some of these teams have fared against their SEC rivals, their SEC counterparts, is that the SEC could find a way to sweep this group. Florida very much playing hard for the most part. They fell off kind of the map against Tennessee. They take on FSU this weekend. Matt Lasser, of course, previewed that game for us on the Monday show. We appreciate him for stopping by as always. You have South Carolina, who gave Texas A&M a fight, but other than that has been super underwhelming. Clemson's maybe figured some things out, but we haven't seen them play a decent team really over the last few games since they've settled into where they are, which is now making a bowl and just kind of being one of the middle of the pack average teams of the ACC. It'd be huge if Clemson can at least beat South Carolina and help out the ACC in that regard. And then you have Kentucky at Louisville. Kentucky's been playing really hard for Mark Stoops down the stretch, but we haven't seen them get through with a bunch of wins. And they did get beat up pretty good by Vandy this past weekend. Louisville is absolutely reeling. We'll pick that game tomorrow, but I have a tough time seeing Louisville pull that one off just with where things stand. The big matchup, Georgia Tech, we'll preview that one later in the show. As we continue to kind of break down the college football playoff picture, though, I do want to spend a few more moments on Miami, and we'll do that after this quick break with our show, because we do want to remind you guys during this holiday season, our friends at the La La Land Foundation can absolutely make a difference. We would ask you to consider supporting them, the La La Land Foundation, wherever you are. And it's all about kindness. It's about giving back. It's more than an action. It is a commitment to their movement of helping people find a way to start their life and start it in a positive way that allows them the best opportunity to succeed. And I think that is the most important thing when I look at what the La La Land Foundation does. Is you can support monetarily, you can support their scholarship initiatives for youth transitioning into adulthood from the foster care system, or you can donate your time. You can get involved as a mentor, which is really, really fulfilling. They have events. They have all of these different avenues to support these ladies and gentlemen coming up through to adulthood. And the scholarship program as well allows college students to pursue their dreams and have the tools that they need to have the best shot to succeed. So we really love that we've been able to partner with them, and we're so appreciative of them for allowing us to partner with them. They are looking for corporate sponsors as well and partners. So if your company is interested, you can go to lalalandfoundation.com. The link is in our podcast episode description. But we really hope that you guys take a moment to see what they're all about, and that is all about kindness. And it really is the main driving force that they look at when they evaluate anything, evaluate who they want to work with, evaluate who's going to be around their people that they're trying to support. It is kindness, and a little bit of kindness, especially during this holiday season, can go a long way. So we ask that you guys consider to support our friends at the La La Land Foundation. And just what a great, just avenue for people to support this time of year. So and all year, I mean, to help young people get on their feet and get going in the right direction is just something that this country needs to have a bright future as well. So we appreciate the La La Land Foundation for their support of All Access AM. When you look at the college football playoff rankings, and I want to give credit to Josh Pate, and I listen to Josh Pate. I listen to Kelly Gramlich and Eric McLean. I listen to the ACC Network pod. I consume all the pods that I can. And just to, as I'm driving around town when it's college football season, unfortunately, my country music takes a backseat. Sometimes we'll Blink 182, it takes a backseat. It's all about consuming as much as I can on the college football world so that maybe if I miss something, I can go back and find out something else or research something or, oh, that was interesting. Let me go watch that game again, something like that. And all the way back in late September, Josh had this point that this was pre All Access AM, but I was sitting there with one of my friends as well, watching the Texas A&M game against Notre Dame. And as soon as that one went final, we were sitting there. It was late at night. That game kind of dragged on those final minute or so as Notre Dame was trying to make it happen and trying to, overcome that final deficit that Texas A&M had on them. And I said, wow, this is a huge moment for Texas A&M. Maybe this kind of drives them to, the type of season that they haven't had. But at the same time, the bigger takeaway from that game was that Notre Dame, in their two major non-conference matchups, so to speak, like those are the two ones that you looked at preseason that you said Miami, top 5 team, Texas A&M getting a ton of buzz for the SEC, kind of sleeper SEC pick because Texas A&M hadn't done it. Those were the two big games for Notre Dame because you look at the rest of the schedule and you thought, could USC do it? But other than that, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Notre Dame's schedule. They failed that part of the schedule, and teams do get better over the course of seasons. But to circle back to Josh, he goes, watch the committee. If they reel off 10 straight, guess what they're going to say? Notre Dame's playing their best ball. Notre Dame's doing this. Notre Dame passes this. Guess what? That is exactly what's going on here. Our friend Ari Wasserman of On3 had a really good column. I don't agree with all of it because the headline is pretty jarring, getting hit with the, quote, biggest college football playoff committee injustice ever. I think the rivals against FSU or for FSU will certainly, compete with that. But when you're talking about teams that are in this 2-loss range, there's not an injustice going on here. It's just bad ball. And that's where the committee needs to kind of step up and maybe own this a little bit more, because you've already screwed yourself over if you're Miami by losing to Louisville, losing to SMU. You've got a chance for the ACC championship. Fine, great. You can maybe still get there and prove everyone wrong, get to the college football playoff, all of those things, and be fine. But where Miami didn't screw themselves is against Notre Dame. They won. They won the game. It was not as close as the score even showed at the end of that one, as Notre Dame kind of made a late push, but Miami just made CJ Carr look uncomfortable, really, really played well as a whole in that game, and they were ready to go for the start of the season. If we want to talk about having a preseason game, have at it, guys. Have at it. You can have Miami play at FIU. If you want to have Notre Dame play Ohio, you can have Ohio State play some other team, up there. I'm trying to think of the one that it just kind of comes to Youngstown State. You can have Michigan play Appalachian State, which wouldn't be funny. But you can have all these teams play these preseason games if we don't want to talk about counting the first week of the regular season or giving people a pass for early season. It's all a resume. It's all something the committee should consider, but they are not wanting to consider it with Notre Dame versus Miami. And guess what? Miami has one ranked loss, SMU, in overtime. And they have one loss to another team that at the time of playing them was, I thought, and I still think you could argue, 1A, 1B roster-wise with Miami. People don't want to give Louisville that much credit on their roster, but it's really, really good. And Miami kind of broke Louisville. It's just the reality of it. And they've spiraled since. They've had some injuries. They've had this. They've had that. It's been unfortunate for Louisville, and it impacts how people view the Miami game that they played. And because it was at home, double down, it hurts. But when Carson Beck throws for most of his interceptions in one night of a season, you're going to have a day like that. CJ Carr looked incredibly average against Miami. That's not being held against him right now. Although that's the only team with the pulse, really, outside of Texas A&M that they've played. USC, solid. They were able to get a win there. USC is not going to be considered a team that is the end-all, be-all. Oregon dispatched them in pretty emphatic fashion, I thought, this past weekend. And so Notre Dame's entire schedule, and this is where Ari makes a great point on 3, is talking about the eye test with Notre Dame. Here is who Notre Dame played. And to circle this all back with what Josh said at the end of September, I would have looked ahead to this schedule and thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. You're going to have Boston College. You're going to have Syracuse with maybe Steve Angeli. Remember, we're talking end of September here. So you would have seen Steve Angeli get cooking and rolling and all of those things. You're like, wow, Notre Dame's going to have a tough game against Syracuse. They're going to have an opportunity to play Boston College, which could be maybe gelling with Bill O'Brien's group late in the season. We weren't even talking about Pitt being their quote unquote toughest test in November. And of course, they took care of business against Pitt. That helps. That helps. But to see Notre Dame get the eye test credit for facing teams like 2-9 Arkansas, 2-9 Purdue, 1-10 Boston College, and 3-8 Syracuse. And we know that Syracuse team right now, if they had to play with that team all season, they wouldn't win a game. They really would not win a game. And it's just wild to me to see Notre Dame get talked about the way they are. It's truly insane. I think Notre Dame is a really good team. I think Miami is the better team. They played on the field and settled it, and it wasn't close. And I think that's the really difficult part for Miami fans. That's the difficult part for the committee in the future to talk about. And to then add to the fact that Notre Dame is ranked where they are, Miami is ranked not right behind them, and saying, hey, you know what? Miami lost 2 games in conference play as of late. We don't see that as a good thing. They're not playing as well right now. Here's why. Their wins have been over Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Stanford, a couple of others. I might have butchered Miami's schedule there, but they did not play good teams when they came off of those Louisville and SMU losses. And so you can also say that Miami hasn't had a chance to prove itself. Well, guess what? Outside of USC, Notre Dame hasn't had a chance to prove itself. Pitt's a good team, but that is, if you're talking about a top 10 team in the country, that's a different echelon of proving yourself. So it's a really difficult thing for the committee to create this separation. And meanwhile, the committee does create for Miami this new narrative that they have a loss against a top 25 team. Well, if you knew how SMU was playing, if you had watched SMU play the way that they had going into that Miami game, you get the win at Clemson. They're coming off, obviously, the huge loss of Wake Forest. But once you see that game against SMU and Miami play out and the way SMU played, that is a really, really, that's a data point that should give them a boost and a move up in the ranking right now versus having them stay where they're at. So the whole thing is just a complete mess for Miami. It's a black mark on the committee as far as just how you even view what they say, how they rank, all of those things. It's a complete eye test, smell test situation for the College Football Playoff Committee. And it's something that really needs to get looked at. And I'm not saying anything that anybody else probably isn't saying here, and not saying anything that is controversial with regards to what maybe needs to happen and be changed and be looked at in the offseason by some of the leaders in college athletics. But when you see this big of a discrepancy for no other reason than, well, we just think this is how it's playing out right now, it's just strange. And Miami has a legitimate gripe over how this is all being played out. If Alabama stays out of the SEC championship game, and if BYU goes to the Big 12 championship game, which they're currently slated to do, that all really lines up for Miami to be left out. The committee is saying these are the rankings. This is what they're doing. So the question would be, would a ranked win over Pitt for Miami push them past Alabama, who will play Auburn this weekend, who's obviously struggling, fired their coach? And will they pass BYU if BYU ultimately goes to the Big 12 championship game and loses to Texas Tech? Because BYU will then be left out of the college football playoff race and that run. But you'd have Miami with a late top 25 win. Could that cause them to jump Alabama and BYU in the final rankings? That's a question that the committee is going to have to wrestle with, especially if Alabama doesn't get to Atlanta and have an opportunity to kind of prove itself late this season. And Alabama would be left out as of now. So a really, really difficult task. Or excuse me, Alabama would not be left out right now in the college football playoff race and bracket and all of those things. They would be facing off with, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm losing my mind here for a second. But yeah, no, Alabama would be at Ole Miss in an SEC matchup. So quite the interesting challenge there. If Miami gets if Miami gets a late top 25 win over Pitt, could you imagine the rioting in the streets if Alabama gets jumped late by Miami to put them in and face Ole Miss? Boy, that would be something, because you'd have your ACC champion in all likelihood. Let's say SMU, Virginia win out. Then you're having one of those teams get in and face off against Oregon as of right now on the road. And if Miami gets that top 25 win over Pitt, the committee's setting it up for it to be one right now. That would give them the power to maybe jump an Alabama and a BYU. The question is, they would have to do it now. They really would have to do it now, being next week's rankings, instead of having it play out through conference championship week, because Alabama will have not played. BYU will have lost. The natural thing would be, obviously, if BYU loses the Big 12 championship, they're already out. Miami can just slide up there to number 11. But the problem with that is that you penalize BYU for playing in a conference championship. But two, then you say, okay, well, are they going to jump Alabama? No, why not? Alabama didn't make their championship game, and Miami added another ranked win. It's just such an interesting thing. We'll get our answer next week. I don't understand why it has to be either or with Notre Dame and Miami. I think both are playing really well. I think Alabama has played pretty well and deserves to be in as well. But guess what? There's only 12 spots right now, and there is still a weekend of games left to be played. So let's get to the chat here. Good morning, KNW 2300 SMU fan and Pony Up Mustang fans are feeling great this morning. Aviation 1436, handle business, and we're in. Probably talk about SMU. And yes, likely to play Oregon or Ole Miss if SMU wins out. But here's the thing. This is where it gets complicated, and we'll talk about this in just a moment for the ACC champion, just in general, whether it's SMU, whether it's Virginia, whether it's Pitt, whoever. That game in the first round will be, of course, on the road. And here's what you have here. You'll be in the 11 spot unless Miami maybe makes it in. If Miami beats Pitt and then beats a ranked team to end up as the ACC champ, could that jump them all the way to number 10? Would that be enough top 25 wins in the last 2 weeks of the season to jump Notre Dame and put them rightfully at number 9 over Notre Dame? That could get interesting. I don't see it. But whatever the ACC champ is, if it's anybody other than Miami, and again, we're just going to not consider Duke right now because that would be a very scary situation. But the ACC champ would, as of now, play Oregon or Ole Miss if they win out. The other possibility is if Georgia loses in the SEC championship and Texas Tech wins the Big 12 championship, that would give Texas Tech a top 12 win. That would give Georgia a loss. Would Georgia slide all the way to 6? And the ACC champion would have to go play in Athens. That is something that I'm watching very closely, because you're going to have a champion of the SEC. And if Texas A&M and Georgia, if Texas A&M takes care of business, you're going to see them, be in the SEC championship. They're ranked ahead of Georgia. They're undefeated. If Georgia falls to A&M, do they slide all the way to 6? Because they're not sliding to 7, because Ole Miss lost to Georgia in Athens and kind of blew it and fumbled their bag to beating Georgia on the road and being in that top 4 spot right now, in my opinion. So that would be kind of full circle talking point there as far as head-to-head matchup for Georgia if Georgia is in the SEC championship and loses. So it's complicated, but as of right now, let's say everything kind of holds the way it is. maybe Georgia falls to number 5 and takes on the group of 5 champion. That would be something that would be advantageous. A lot of people think you don't even necessarily want to be in the 4 spot. You might want to be in that 5 spot. You want to be hosting a college football playoff game. You want to be playing the group of 5 champion. Just food for thought. But really there's let's say a handful of teams that SMU or Virginia or Pitt could face, Georgia Tech could face in the college football playoff. It is really, I think, Oregon, Ole Miss, and that's kind of it. That's kind of the list. I would say Georgia in there, just again, depending on if they drop them 2 spots or 1. If Georgia lost in the SEC championship, I go back and forth on that pick. We'll talk about those games obviously next week, but assuming Georgia plays Texas A&M, I lean Georgia. Just the experience, the talent, all of those things that they have had with Kirby's team for so long in Atlanta. We saw it play out the way it did against Texas last year. I could see Georgia beating A&M, and then that's A&M's first loss. How do you not penalize them because they played an extra football game? And that's assuming they get past Texas this weekend. So lots of different angles there. But yes, to kind of add to your point, you wouldn't mind playing in College Station if Texas knocked off the Aggies. That really would be something to watch very, very closely. If you're an SMU fan, what a game that would be. What a game it would be is if BYU knocked off Texas Tech and dropped Tech into that 6th spot. Oregon would side up. Maybe that's where that kind of settles in. I don't think Ole Miss would jump Texas Tech because, again, you're not trying to penalize for playing in a conference championship game, but you also can't leave a Texas Tech at 5 if they lost to BYU. A trip to Lubbock, a trip to College Station. If you're an SMU fan, boy, sign me up. Doesn't even matter if you think that they'd win. You'd finally get like a real SMU team as of late to get a shot at A&M. And then you'd have Texas Tech and SMU, 2 of the new kids on the block in terms of what it takes to be successful in today's era of college football, breaking it down on the field, seeing who can, outspend the other in a sense. So will it be Texas Tech's, high flying Cody Campbell, or will it be SMU's, Bill Armstrong, Rhett Lashley kind of culture world that they live in, and also, have spent plenty of money on their own to get to where they are too. So what a fascinating world that would be in if SMU and a Texas Tech or a Texas A&M played each other in a first round game. It would just be unbelievable. And for all of those fan bases, they can probably hold a pep rally around the fact that Texas is not going to be in the college football playoff either. So, and Aviation 1436, appreciate you chiming in. Wouldn't Miami be 3rd or 4th if they were in the ACC? The brand bias is out of control in college football. I'm trying to think of that. You're talking about Notre Dame. Oh, there it is. The next comment. Notre Dame being 3rd or 4th in the ACC. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's the hard part about comparing these games is, outside of the Miami game, you would have a second loss. It would be out of conference to Texas A&M. Yeah, I mean, that's that. I think with Notre Dame, and this is a good point, and I think I might have said this on the show earlier this week, or I might have said it earlier this month. Notre Dame is a good team. Let's get that very clear. Jeremiah Love, one of the best running backs in the country. I mean, I've seen him. I've seen Kewan Lacey. I've watched a lot of both this year. Those are the 2 guys for me that really stand out the most in terms of the Doak Walker Award, which they're both finalists for. But if they had a true ACC logo on their chest, well, they'd currently have a loss in league play to Miami. So Miami would hold the tiebreaker over them in a sense. If Miami only had 1 loss in league play, but they have 2, they still went on to lose to Louisville and SMU. But Notre Dame would not necessarily be in the driver's seat of their destiny, I would think, right? Like that is something that they would need help with or what have you, but somebody else is probably doing all of the math on how those games and tiebreakers would work out. So that's really a tough thing for me to say. All I know is they'd enter this weekend with a shot to play for an ACC championship, and with their 2 losses being two of the best losses in the country. So they would get credit in that regard. I think they would get similar credit if they were in the ACC, but they still would be talked about differently because they're an ACC team if they were. So it's an interesting conversation to have around Notre Dame. Los Altos SM, thanks for chiming in. Chat LFG, that's right. Let's go. Thanksgiving. Can't wait till we start getting more 5-star recruits. It is I would say the 2027 class for SMU could be very interesting if they can get a couple of these guys that are as highly thought of as they are right now to jump on board. That would be huge. A&M could absolutely go 0-2 in their final 2 games. Guys, I really appreciate everybody in the chat. I love that it gets going. I can kind of sense it around that 7:30 mark usually that people are starting to wake up a little bit. Hayden Howerton was with us right from the get-go, of course, but you do have people kind of waking up, having their coffee. So we hope we're a part of your morning routine now, as we've been doing this now for well over a month, breaking it down on the ACC and what it means. Each and every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time. Please subscribe to our All Access AM YouTube channel. We're closing in on 200 subscribers over there. I know that seems like maybe a low number. Maybe it seems like a high number to some since we're only a month in. But either way, we need to really, really grow. We want to get to 1,000 subs over there. That is our goal. Send the page link to your friends. Send the page link to your family. It does absolutely nothing. Doesn't sign you up for really emails unless you want to be notified when we go live, things like that. So really appreciate all of you guys who have hit that subscribe button to our All Access AM YouTube channel. You might be watching on the SMU YouTube channel. We appreciate that. Please go to All Access AM and subscribe to that channel. It helps us out in such a huge way. 310 in UK. Billy, you've got a worldwide audience. Some of us have been up for 8 hours. Look at that. They're watching us in the UK. I hope you're having maybe a little beverage, little brewski. I know you're not celebrating Thanksgiving over there, but hope you're enjoying your Wednesday, little hump day over there in the UK. So thanks for chiming in, 310 UK. I want to close with Georgia Tech kind of prediction and talking about that game, what it means for the ACC, and all of those things. But before I do, I want to remind you guys about 2 people in our lives on the sponsor front. I want to remind you guys about Sportsmo. Sportsmo is a revolutionary way to support your favorite college team, and they can really, help your college build out its NIL rev share fund through your micro donations. You can say, hey, I think Carson Beck's going to throw for 4 touchdowns this week. I'm going to make a $5 donation if he does that. You can kind of bet it. You can shame some of your friends into also competing with you and gamifying the way you watch your favorite college team. And instead of throwing away money on gambling or maybe, being really, really nervous because you've got a lot of money on the game, well, why don't you just go ahead and pledge to giving money to your university and helping them compete and be better? So even if you still want to gamble, you've helped your favorite team get better and better. So learn more about Sportsmo. Go to sportsmo.org today and download the app and learn more about how they're revolutionizing giving in college football.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.
And also do want to remind you guys that this holiday season, give the gift of books. And we honor Americans that have protected our freedom for years and years. And Doyle Glass does that through his books, Lions of Medina and Swift Sword. They are two outstanding firsthand accounts of the Vietnam War and what those heroes went through. Doyle Glass is one of the best sellers on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, so you can pick up your books there. You can order it on Amazon. You can get it on an ebook or audiobook or what have you. So make sure you go to doyleglass.com. You can grab his books, Lions of Medina, Swift Sword. Great Christmas gift for your uncle, for your dad, for your grandfather, for you if you're a history buff like me. I've already finished with Swift Sword. I just got Lions of Medina, so looking forward to reading that over the holidays. But again, check out Doyle Glass and his books today, and he has more works coming down the pipeline. So support him. Let's do this. 310 in UK. When do two early predictions on the 2026 ACC championship contenders come out? I assume that is a good question. I can give you a way too early ACC championship prediction right now, because that's what I'll do for you, because you're over there in the UK watching us. And I know wherever you're watching us, you're going to All Access AM on YouTube and hitting the subscribe button. Again, it's free to do. Just click it. If you are, thank you. If you have friends that are sitting next to you or family, grab their phone and do it for me as well. Early ACC championship prediction for 2026. I'm going to go with the Pitt Panthers. Mason Heinschel leading his team to that conference championship game. I think there's a world where they play for it this year, and there's a chance that they play for it next year. I'm going to pick the Pitt Panthers to face off against. It's going to be biased because most of you watching know who I cover on a day-to-day basis, but SMU is going to return Kevin Jennings, guys. They are going to return a lot of pieces on this defense, their entire linebacker group. They'll have to replace Isaiah Wacobia and Ahmad Moses, but they have a young safety in Tyron Polley. They'll address in the portal. They're going to have some key pieces back on the defensive line. Their offensive line is almost completely back, save for Logan Parr and Savion Byrd. Their running back room is largely going to be back. Their wide receiver group is going to be really kind of young and talented. This SMU team has a chance to be really, really good in 2026. We'll see how it all plays out, though. I'm going to pick Pitt and SMU to go after it in the ACC championship. If you wanted my who's going to be in that third spot, kind of challenging right there, have to be Miami. I mean, how can you not? They're going to be, once again, one of the top teams in rosters in college football. I don't even need to really sit back and see what they're going to do as far as the quarterback position, because I know they're going to go out and pay somebody the big bucks to come to Coral Gables, and how can you blame them? So those are my two picks for the game, and we'll see if they hold up. I am relying on you. I need to actually, I'm going to put it in my phone right now, have myself a little reminder here that picked Pitt SMU with Miami as the outside looking in on that ACC championship game in 2026. Let's end with this. Georgia Tech. Huge game for Georgia Tech. An opportunity to show everyone that last week's loss to Pitt was a fluke. That last week's loss to Pitt doesn't define who they are. They lost a difficult game at NC State, and they haven't really been able to play much defense. And that's why they're sitting where they are after a season that has seen Haynes King just do incredible things for the most part. He ran into a buzzsaw Saturday night. He did everything he could to get past Pitt, but just too many mistakes, just way too many mistakes. They have a chance to go into Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Remember, they sold out this home game for $10 million in today's day and age of college football. Unfortunately, the dollar is still king, and they did that. They're going to play in an unbelievable environment. It's probably going to be a Georgia home game. Let's just kind of be honest about it. But they will have a chance to make a statement against Georgia, and in a game that can really ruin Georgia. Talked about in the chat earlier, those of you guys in there, Aviation was talking about how Texas A&M could finish 0-2. Georgia could be on the flip side of that as well. I don't think it's likely. I think Georgia takes care of business, unfortunately, for the ACC in this one, but it could happen because it's a rivalry game, and we saw how good of a game last year's overtime bonanza was. in Athens between these two teams. And we know that Brent Key and this Georgia Tech team has been stewing all week over what happened against Pitt. What can they do? They can control what they can control. And that's at 2:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. Go out and beat Georgia. They are 13.5-point underdogs in this game, which I think is a huge number in a rivalry game. Could I see Georgia hitting it? Absolutely. Georgia's playing really well. Their offense is very efficient. Their defense is kind of coming together a little bit more and more. And they really just have this ability to kind of just grind you down and eventually make you quit, which is what Georgia Tech has kind of lived on for much of this season. But it is a rivalry game. I think it's going to be close. I think we're looking at like a 7-point type of game where we're looking at a late stop to seal it for one of these teams that is up a touchdown. Team is going to be trying to drive the ball, get that ball across the goal line, tie it, force overtime. I really think we're in for a classic. And for the ACC's sake, I hope we are, because they need to go into this weekend and take care of business. Guys, Florida State took care of Alabama to start this season. It is a heavy lift for Florida State to bookend their season with a win over another SEC team, even though Florida is down. But if Georgia Tech can knock off Georgia the rest of this weekend, ACC teams can go out there and play loose against their SEC counterparts because Georgia Tech has their back. And 13.5 points is a lot for Georgia. They are heavily favored on the money line to win this one. I do think Georgia comes away with it, but if Georgia Tech can keep it close, that would be kind of a moral victory for the league because Georgia is playing at such a high level right now. The committee chair, Hunter Yurachek, did get asked if Georgia Tech knocks off Georgia, they'd have 10-2 records. They'd have a head-to-head. Of course, Georgia Tech too far apart from Georgia to be considered for the college football playoff. And he kind of said, yeah, I think it would be very hard for Georgia Tech to jump that far from 23 into the field with a win on Saturday, but can't predict what could happen. We'll evaluate the games that happened this weekend and rank the teams 1 through 25. So there you have it. Georgia Tech can beat Georgia and not get into the college football playoff no matter what. But I don't think Georgia Tech is a team that should get penalized the way they have been in a sense. But, sitting there at two losses and the losses, the way they've happened, you just can't ignore. And you can't ignore this late in the season. It's kind of the Miami issue that Miami is facing, where their losses have come in the middle of league play, far enough along that your team's developed. And now they're having to play against the narrative, which Notre Dame, if you pop those Miami and Texas A&M games in the middle of the season and they have the same outcome, the committee's like, well, they had their shot to prove it. They played a bunch of cupcakes early. They didn't. Here's where they are. But the committee's going to put in Notre Dame no matter what. But to Georgia Tech, I do think Georgia Tech covers in this game. I think this is a 7-point type of game. I do think it goes Georgia's way, but a really hard-fought rivalry football game. The over-under in this one, 59.5. So it's not surprising to see Vegas think that Georgia is going to put some points up on Georgia Tech, but I do think there is kind of a rivalry intangible piece to this football game when trying to predict how it will actually play out. I do think Georgia Tech's going to give them a game. I think Haynes King is going to try his really best to have a legacy type game. Maybe it finds a way to put him in New York, but I still believe that, and I said this on Monday's show, if Haynes King would have beaten Pitt, if Haynes King and this Georgia Tech team would have beaten Georgia, that's the way he ends up in New York. And if they don't beat Georgia, I don't see it happening. But because they have Haynes King, they're going to have a real shot to do that this weekend on Friday at 2:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. So that is Georgia Tech. Kind of last thought on that. I do think a high-scoring game is advantageous for Georgia Tech. They've kind of been in some of these shootouts before. If you can kind of get Georgia's defense on its heels a little bit, that would be the way to take down the Bulldogs. But again, Georgia, I just think too much. They win, but they don't cover. Georgia Tech makes it a kind of moral victory for the ACC of sorts, being able to play Georgia as tight as they can in this rivalry game. So really looking forward to that game on Friday. Looking forward to all the games on Thanksgiving. So hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. We really appreciate all of you guys that have subscribed to the channel, All Access AM, who jump in the chat and really support us. And help us out with all the comments and all of the, subscribing to the channel. So I'm very thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for our sponsors. We appreciate our friends at OPW Solutions. Again, give them a call for all your commercial services for your company. La La Land Foundation. Go to lalalandfoundation.com and consider donating your time, your money, or seeing how you can get involved. And of course, pick up a book from Doyle Glass as well for the holidays, and support our friends at Sportsmo, which the best way to do that is a win-win. You get to support your favorite college football team. So please hit subscribe to our channel. All Access AM will be live, recorded, whatever you want to say, Thursday morning for Thanksgiving. We'll have a special guest we've got lined up, maybe another, who knows who ends up popping on the show. But we'll have that pre-recorded at the same time, 7 to 8 a.m. Central. It'll be live on the channel. So make sure you guys tune in for that and enjoy it while you're getting the turkey going on Thanksgiving. So thank you guys. I'm really thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for this thing we're building on All Access AM. And I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving and a great final weekend of the regular season. We will talk on Thursday morning, preview all the games across the ACC. So tune in for that show. Thanks for listening, everyone. This has been Wednesday's All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody.